أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وبه نستعين الحمد لله رب العالمين الحمد لله الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله ثم الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين خاتم النبيين حبيب قلوبنا وشفيع نفوسنا سيدنا ومولانا أبي القاسم مصطفى محمد اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعلى آل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين الحمد لله الذي جعلنا من المتمسكين بولاية سيدنا مولانا أمير المؤمنين رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي أما بعد فقد قال الله عز وجل في كتاب المبين وأن تصوموا خير لكم إن كنتم تعلمون صدق الله العلي العظيم اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. My respected elders, my dear youth, my brothers and sisters in Islam, and all those who are viewing, Assalamu alaikum jami'an wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I pray and I hope that the first day of Ramadan was a day filled with joy, filled with happiness, and a day filled with reflection for all of you. We will be continuing the topic that I have chosen for the next few nights, which is why it is important to fast as a youth. And as discussed before, instead of calling this a lecture, I would more like to call this a discussion, even though it is virtual, as I do want our youth to not view this as merely a lecture or a speech, but something that they can practically benefit from, something that they can take away from and apply it to their lives, inshallah. And also, as discussed before, this topic on a very superficial level may seem very general as we discuss this topic every Ramadan, but I want to make sure that this topic is actually filled with practical examples. It is filled with action. It is filled with goal planning. It is filled with self-development as well for our youth, inshallah. The previous discussion, we discussed that before even talking about the importance of fasting in Ramadan for the youth, it is important to see what is the base for fasting. What will make your fasting experience more beneficial and more practical? And as discussed before, we stated that every action needs an intention. That intention is the base for that action, right? And that intention is called the niyyah. We said that if the niyyah is sincere and the niyyah is purified, then that action or that action plan that you will be taking after that niyyah will also be purified. It will also be sincere. And inshallah, you will be successful with those actions. And the example that we gave regarding the base and then the action, which is the niyyah and the post-niyyah, is something that is applicable to a lot of youth in school or in university, where if you intend to write a test or you intend to write an exam or an assignment, you have an intention that what? I want to write the test. I want to write the exam. I want to write the assignment. But there's something more to that niyyah. You do not only want to focus on just passing that exam or test. You want to focus on being successful in it, getting good grades in that, so that from those good grades, you're able to have a better final grade. And from there, you're able to get admission into a better university. And from there, you're able to get a successful job, inshallah. But as a side note, regarding the education system as growing up in the West as well, and this is a message for the youth, this is a message for the parents as well, that we want to make sure that the education system in the West focuses a lot on the grade point average of a student, to say that if a student gets an A, that means that that student is smart. If a student gets less than an A or whatever it is, that means that student is not smart. They're deficient in intellect. And however, I do find that to be a fallacy, because when did grades ever define knowledge? Knowledge is the experience. Knowledge is not meant to be defined by a grade or a number, right? Because we see that kids when they grow up, they have different skills. They're attracted to different things. Not everyone can be successful, or not everyone can carry out an act or be good in a subject, right? Everyone has their own speciality. Everyone has their own skill. And therefore, going to university for some students might not actually be the best choice, because they can be much more successful in, for example, going into the trades, or opening up their own business. And we see that in modern day times, that a lot of people are not necessarily going to university. They're pursuing the trades, they're pursuing investments, they're pursuing business, because that's something they're good at. And alhamdulillah, monetary things are not actually the definition of success as well, but you see them working on their self-development through those things as well. So that's why it's important for our communities to also discuss this subject of the education system, and how we shouldn't let that define the students' smartness or their knowledge, right? Because the experience of life is the experience of wisdom, right? Wisdom and, sincere and genuine experiences gonna help that child to grow further in life, inshallah. Recite salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. So before we even talk about the spiritual implications of fasting, because as we said, that fasting, it has an apparent meaning, and it has something, a meaning that is much deeper, right? That apparent meaning is that physical meaning, right? Or that physical component of fasting, right? Which is to stay away from food, stay away from water, right? And that is important, right? It is important to take care of the physical self, because if you do not take care of the physical self, if you don't have a balanced diet, if you're not focusing on your nutrition, then that will have a negative impact on the soul. It will have a negative impact on the self, on the spirit, right? And the month of Ramadan, it's just, very ironic, because this is the month that we're supposed to be practicing balance, but we don't see that in our diet. We don't see that in the physical aspect of fasting, right? And I can speak on behalf of a lot of the Pakistani communities, right? Me being guilty of this as well, that when we do open our iftar, we open it with, not the healthiest of foods, right? And I'm guilty of this as well. I want to open my fast with fried foods, have samosa, have pakode, have spring rolls. But is that necessarily the smart thing to do? So therefore, it's really important to focus on the physical aspect of Ramadan and see how we can make ourselves healthier through this month. And a few days ago I was going through some statistics, which was really interesting, because it is also this aspect is also mentioned in our hadith. The statistic says that we need to make sure that breaking fast with fruits can provide your body with essential vitamins and minerals, right? And these vitamins include vitamin A, vitamin B, being, very important to vitamins that our body needs. And these vitamins are actually really great antioxidants, right? That which cleans the body. And in other words, eating less heightens the tendency of our body to fight infections in a proactive manner, right? So the less you eat, the better it is, right? And fasting is something that allows us to carry on this methodology and carry on this practice. And Imam Sadiq alayhi salam also states that before having your food, you should have a few fruits before you, have your meal. And you see the quotes and the wisdom of the Ahlul Bayt alayhi salatu wasalam manifesting in today's time and manifesting in today's scientific theories as well. So yet again, it is very important that, yes, we can talk about the spiritual self, but the spiritual self is impacted by the physical self as well. And they go hand in hand. So we really need to make sure that our communities invite speakers that are, professionals in, in health and nutrition, whatever it is, in order to make sure that we're taking care of the physical self as well. Recite salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. So we said that why is it important for our youth to fast? What's in it for them, right? And I want to make this as practical as possible, because I want to show that the characteristics and, everything that you learn from fasting, all the things that you develop from fasting that are a product of fasting, will essentially manifest in your life, right? For the future, right? For your further education, for your work, and whatever it is. And I want to go a bit into depth about some of these characteristics that are not only the youth, but our adults can even implement within their life, and we can take that from fasting. The number one thing that I've noticed that fasting teaches us is something called self-discipline, right? Self-discipline to make sure that we are organized individuals, to make sure that we have that self-discipline in order to carry on with our action planning. Because without no action planning, there can actually be no goals. And if there's no goals, then what's really the purpose of you doing anything, right? So essentially, the root cause of all these things is making sure that you have self-discipline within yourself. And I believe, experiencing the culture in the East, living in Qom for quite some time, some of the individuals that have almost reached a level of perfection of self-discipline are our ulama, our scholars, our teachers, right? Whether they be in the West or whether they be in the East. But I can give you a personal example from the East in which I saw self-discipline, at its epitome. So in my madrasa, we have a 1 hour lunch break. So what I would usually do is I would have a quick bite, have a quick snack, whatever it is, and then go downstairs into the library to make sure I can be a step ahead of my studies, maybe study for the next class or maybe review something that I wasn't understanding. So I would go down to the library and, just review my things. And in the library, there wouldn't only be students that would be studying there, but there would also be our teachers, right? The scholars that would be teaching us in our madrasas as well. And it surprised me, right? Because it seemed like I didn't have any self-discipline at all. And why do I say this? Is because when I would be studying, I would probably need a break every 20 minutes. It can get exhausting, right? So I would take my break every 15, 20 minutes, go outside, have a glass of water, walk around, breathe or whatever it is. And then when I would come back inside, I would see those same teachers that were there before me focusing on their studies, right? They would probably be studying for their own advanced classes, or they would probably be preparing for the next lecture, right? They would be focused in the same position, concentrated, no distractions at all, right? And then I would go out for another break, come back, and then they'll be doing the same exact thing, right? They wouldn't be moving at all, focused on one exact thing, right? They're concentrated, no distractions at all. And that goes to show us that what I've noticed in the West as well, a lot of us are, when we do seek knowledge, it's merely for a superficial aspect of it, right? We want to just get that grade and get a job. We're not studying knowledge for the sake of studying knowledge, right? However, if you come to, these sciences that the Hausa provides for you, they're not meant to be sciences, which are defined by what grade you get on this exam. That's not how it is. That's not how it was. And that's not how it actually should be, right? And therefore, they're studying the science in and of itself, right? And that's something that also influences that self-discipline, right? So these ulama, these teachers who have almost perfected this characteristic of self-discipline have trained themselves for this thing. All right. They have trained themselves from a younger age to make sure that they're concentrated, to make sure that they don't get distracted by their phone, that they're not flipping through Instagram every 5 minutes, or they're not checking their mail or check to see who messaged, or whatever it is. Right. So it's very important to learn from the people who are on a very high level of perfecting this characteristic of self-discipline. Recite salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. So this self-discipline that we're talking about, it is for the physical self, but the deeper meaning of keeping away from food or water, it also disciplines the soul, right? Why do I say that? Because self-discipline is not only a base for achieving your goals, but it's also a base for something that is very important for our iman, which is sabr, which is patience. Self-discipline will, allow you to be perfected in your patience, right? And no doubt sabr is something that all of us should have, but is it something that we truly implement? We talk about it all the time, right? But we need to make sure that how can we achieve that sabr? How can we, in the times of hardships, practice patience, right? And there's a beautiful hadith in Usul al-Kafi that I want to discuss, which is by Imam Sadiq alayhi salatu wassalam. He says, الصبر من الإيمان بمنزلة الرأس من الجسد فإذا ذهب الرأس ذهب جسد كَذَلِكَ إِذَا ذَهَبَ الصَّبْرُ ذَهَبَ إِيمان. Right? This is a very beautiful hadith with a lot of symbolism, right? Which has a very deeper meaning, which is very important for us to implement. So Imam Sadiq over here says, sabr to Iman is like the head to the body, right? So very deep. If there's no head, then there's no body, right? So then what does Imam Sadiq alayhi salam says? He says, فَإِذَا ذَهَبَ رَأَسْ ذَهَبَ جَسَدْ. If there's no head, then there's no body. If the head goes, then the body goes. What is that like? What is he comparing it to? كَذَلِكَ إِذَا ذَهَبَ الصَّبْرُ ذَهَبَ إِيمان. ذَهَبَ الْإِيمان. Right? So then, just like, if the head goes, the body goes. What does he compare that to? If sabr goes, then iman goes, right? So we need to understand that the base for iman, one of the major principles in order for us to have true iman in the truest sense is what? Having sabr, right? And in regards to what we've been talking about, a lot of the times you'll see when you have that self-discipline, you'll have patience. And a very important example of this is, when people are working out, when they have that self-discipline, when they're organized, when they know how to train, when they know at what times to train, when they know what type of, nutrition their body needs, that is all based on self-discipline. When they have self-discipline, they have patience. How? Because they know that, okay, if I'm doing bicep curls or I'm working on my triceps for a week, that doesn't mean I'm going to see results in 1 week. No, they have that self-discipline, which shows them that, okay, if I'm consistent, then I'm going to have that patience, which is going to allow me to see results in the future. But I'm going to be patient for that because I know it's going to come if I have that consistency, right? So that consistency is caused by what? What's the root cause of that? It's self-discipline. So then we have self-discipline, we have consistency, and then we have sabr, right? And fasting in relation to this is very important, right? Because a lot of the times when we're not able to have that sip of water, have a few bites of food that we really want, it teaches us that self-discipline that we need to stay away from it. And what is that based upon? That's based upon that pure intention, that sincere niyyah that we talked about, that I'm staying away from these things for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala because it pleases Him. But I also know that it's going to have a positive impact on myself, which is what? Character development. Right? And one of the key components that we're discussing of that character development is what? Developing self-discipline. Recite salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. And I feel like a lot of these characteristics that we're going to be talking about in the next few days, and today's, characteristic being self-discipline, they're very important for the youth. Why? Because in this age, in the time of you being the youth, this is the age for you to enhance your skills, enhance your character development, right? Because this is the age where you're most motivated, right? You're most inspired, right? This is the age where you have a lot of energy. You want to try a lot of new things, right? You want to have your hands in different places, right? And this is very evident because I see a lot of our youth, mashallah, they're really successful. They're doing school, they're in entrepreneur groups, they're focusing on business, they're focusing on, developing skills for themselves, right? Which you cannot necessarily learn from university, but they're developing that skills from another place, right? In order to, be successful in the future, right? Have skills in many different areas, right? And so it is this time, right? Whether you're 13, 14, 15, 16, or, while you're in your youth, this is the time for you to perfect these characteristics, right? And a biggest example of this, which I'm sure a lot of you hear from our parents, may Allah bless them all, is that they tell us, beta, when I was your age, right? In order for me to get to school, I would have to walk 10 kilometers, right? I would have to cross a river, climb a mountain, go through fire. I'm just playing. But those are some of the examples that our parents bring to us, right? That they had to go through all these struggles in order to, right, achieve a goal that they wanted. And that goal at that time was their education. They wanted to be successful, right? And so in order to be successful, in order to reach their goal, what did they do? They worked on their self-discipline, right? Which can take different forms, right? For some of our parents, it was walking that 10 kilometers, right? For other parents, it would be that, they weren't from a very well-to-do background and they had to get money from other means in order to support themselves and their family, right? In order to get an education, right? So the struggle is very different, right? But I think from our elders, right? even though they might not have the fanciest degrees like we do, because we definitely have more opportunities than they did back in that time, right? It is important to learn from them. It is important to seek their wisdom, right? Because our elders, our parents, right, and whoever it is, they can provide us with the things that we're not learning in university. They can provide us with the things that our workplace is not teaching us, right? Because yes, those things are very important, but in their own place. But you're gonna see as you grow older that the things that are gonna help you grow as a person and be successful in life, to help yourself and to help others, is what? Making sure that you're seeking that benefit from your elders. You sit down with them, ask them about their life experiences, inshallah. Recite salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. And so self-discipline is not easy. You're gonna face hardships throughout this whole process, right? And everyone does. But this is that age where you have that energy. You're self-driven, inshallah, to make sure that if I have this hardship, I'm gonna work on myself in order to get through that hardship, right? But that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to do it yourself. That's not the message over here. The message is that, yes, you will have hardships. Everyone will face hardships, right? But you have to make sure you reflect, right, how you're going to get over that hardship, right? If you can do it yourself without any problems, without exerting yourself too much where it affects your mental health, right, go for it. But if you need help, right, make sure you're asking help from genuine and sincere people who are actually willing to help you, right? It's not asking for help does not display your weakness, right? And I think, throughout my educational experience here, my experience in Hosa, right, I couldn't have gone through all of that stuff without asking for help from some of the most wonderful people that I've, met in my experience over there, right? So asking for help is not a sign of weakness. It actually shows your strength, because you know where your weaknesses are and you want to perfect yourself. You want to better those weaknesses, right? And through that, you're asking for help, which is, to me, it's the biggest sign of your strength. It's the biggest sign of your bravery, inshallah. So today, what we went through is what? It's important to fast as a youth, because fasting not only will help you to prevent yourself for, while you're fasting, to stay away from food or water or whatever it is, and also staying away from those sins, but is also going to help you for your, your development, right? And what helps you through the development? It's the aspect that we touched upon today, which is what? Self-discipline, right? And we see that self-discipline is a root cause for a lot of other things, right? As we said, self-discipline can lead to your consistency. Consistency can lead to your perfection, right? Which is very subjective. And from your perfection will, help you to reach your goal, right? And through that process, you're learning more characteristics, as we learned today, which is what? Being a patient person. As we saw, that there's a very big principle, or that is very big component, a very important component of a Muslim, of being a mu'min. And inshallah, all of us can reach that stage. Inshallah, I hope all of you benefited, and through the next few nights, we will also be discussing the same topic, and inshallah go more into depth as how as youth we can take the importance of fasting, right, and the actual process or the experience of fasting to better ourselves, right, to grow ourselves, right, so that it helps us through the future, inshallah. Wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala ali baytihi at-tayyibin at-tahirin. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وبه نستعين. الحمد لله رب العالمين. الحمد لله الذي هدانا لهذا